Okay, good afternoon, world. It's time for another episode of the Poppy and Lou, making sense of it all one more time. Poppy, how are you, hon? How you doing? So our theme from my lady here, this will get us going, is navigating the unknown, tempers, tantrums, and triggers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I would think a few people would identify.
Yes.
So why don't we slowly go through who we are and what we mean by that title whilst we give people the opportunity to jump on.
Sure.
Hello on the replay. Nice to see you guys.
Exactly. Yes.
Let us know you're on the replay, and if you've shared the video, put a 1 in the chat if you've shared the video once you come on. We would appreciate it. That's how we can pay it forward, right, Lou?
Yeah.
Regardless, if something moves you, share it.
Yeah. Perfect. So why don't you go ahead since I'm sharing here?
Yes. Well, if we've not met, where have you been all of my life and Lou's life?
Right.
Lou, I know from about 6 years ago. He popped up on Facebook, and he was just this beardy, very beautiful, in my opinion, looking man. I don't know if you chaps like that, but I often call men beautiful.
I can handle it. It's tough.
Yeah, it just means the look. And I don't know what you were saying, but I thought, oh, I've got to know him. Did I reach out to you, or did I just like your page? I think I reached out to you, didn't I?
Well, what I remember happening, honey, is that we somehow connected with each other in Messenger. And I'm like, who are you? And who are you? And we're chatting. And we're like, well, this is interesting. How did this happen?
Yeah. I just thought, hooray, who's this man? And I remember thinking it was very serendipitous because there was something I was thinking or doing. And then boom, of course, here you are on my feed randomly.
Right.
It must have been somebody I knew shared you doing your thing.
Right.
So we've known each other all that time and chatted and been together. We've never actually met in person, which is fascinating.
Never had the pleasure. Yes.
And then what have we done? We just connected, done lives together. Lou has done magic on me when I've been losing my plot, which is fairly frequent over the last 6 years. And so we put our magic together. I'm a psychologist and do lots of stuff, psychotherapy, online programs, coaching, etc. So, that's very clever, Lou.
Thank you.
Do that.
Well, I just have all sorts of tricks up my sleeve.
So, do we have anybody on? I'm keen for people to use us and ask questions while we're together.
Sure, they're just gathering together. There's 2 watching at the moment. We don't have any comments yet.
All right.
Yeah.
And are we on public settings so they can share?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll just double check, but I'm pretty sure. You are live, public. Yep. Oh, here, this one. Yeah.
Okay.
So talk about triggers and tantrums and all sorts of tea things.
Should we define them?
Sure.
How long have you been doing all of your magical stuff?
Well, I started on this little journey 33 years ago this summer.
33. So how old am I? So we've got at least 50-something years between us of our stuff.
Right.
Okay, so what's the title? I've got it here. Navigating the unknown. So I think, come in if you disagree. What we mean by that is finding your way through not being able to predict what's happening moment to moment, which, you know, if we talk in a sort of psychological way, certainty is a human need and we'll do anything to get certainty. It's a survival need. So navigating what we don't know makes on to varying degrees, because we're all on the spectrum of anything.
Sure.
For some, that's like insanity personified, to just have this space and you don't know what's happening, and that can bring all kinds of anxiety and defensiveness, and you might find that you're arguing more or you're being tempted, if not doing it, relapse on things because we look for certainty wherever we can get it, basically.
Yes.
So I'm not the only one in the village losing my mind, I'm thinking. And we have
Probably
mixed
not.
feelings for everything.
Sure, honey.
So
sure.
tempers, we all have a temper. It's what we do with that. It's like I say often, all emotions, all feelings are valid. It's what we do with them that can become a problem.
Yes.
So what we do with our temper, what we do with our anger, etc. And we'll have an internal or external tantrum, because a lot of our children are surfacing our out of control, I don't like this isn't the way I want it to be thing.
Right.
And of course, what triggers that? What triggers all of that? And we use that word a lot. A trigger, as I see it, is there's an underlying insecurity, pain, association with something that's kind of uncomfortable of old,
right,
that essentially we haven't really healed from, and off we go. And so it's not necessarily about, I don't know, the small thing. What is it Tony says, my hero?
Yeah.
We worry about the small things so we don't have to focus on the bigger things that matter.
Yes, well said. Yes.
We obsess
about the small things. Yeah, no, that's great. Of course, Poppy. We obsess about the small things to distract us from the bigger things that we don't know how to cope with or face or deal with or look at. You know?
And it's very clever. It's not conscious for most people, but it's really genius, because that's a way that we can navigate in a way that's defensive. We're not digging into, I mean, I'm really curious what people feel about this, even if you're on the replay, if you identify that, we get so stressed by whatever it is. An example is, I used to have a client and she had to sell her car, and she was just mind blown and anxious and obsessed about it. And it was just symbolic of a bigger thing that she lost, feeling out of control. So nobody could really understand the context, didn't look for it, of her crazy losing it over selling a car. And it wasn't that she was, overly neurotic about life. It was that it really triggered a wound, feeling out of control with change, basically.
Right.
You'll do it.
Yes. And so the more that things are out of control, just to continue with your theme here, the more anxiety there is, and people kind of reach a breaking point in terms of how much uncertainty and anxiety they can cope with. And as you say, then people tend to retreat into the addictions, obsessions, compulsions that distract us from doing the light work or doing the healing work.
I can't, of course, see the comments. So could you help interpret?
Sure, hon. I'm just posting here. Sarah Parsons is here. We have one comment. Thank you, Sarah. Great to have you.
Sarah.
Yeah. I've just put the link here onto Awakened Spirits Network and on the My page. And let's see, I'm trying to put it on a few more pages so people can find us.
I don't know if you're able to post it on my business page. Are you at Poppy or not?
I will give it a go.
Sorry, my devices aren't friends right now, which is very symbolic of the fragmentation that we have with things sometimes, when it always happens with my devices. When I'm unaligned or there's a lot of something going on, my devices go, nah, we're not friends, I'm over it, kind of stuff. And then it shifts back once there's alignment, which I just find fascinating.
Yes.
So whilst you're doing that, are you still doing that?
Yes, I am.
Stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the things I learned in my coaching world is rejection breeds obsession. So when we feel something isn't ours or we're not secure with something, we obsess in whatever way about the thing that's missing. So I was thinking about this in relation to a lot of what's going on when people right now particularly aren't feeling heard, that when we don't feel heard, generally that will trigger something pretty deep from childhood. We can't get away from that, my friends. I'm a therapist. And it triggers something, so that oftentimes, I mean, you could let us know in the chat, when we don't feel heard, we often shout louder in whatever way. So we drink more, or we fight more, or we get more sick, or we cause problems, we act out, we get violent, any of that stuff. So I was thinking, as on my walk today, I was thinking this in terms of pain and rioting and shouting. A lot of the people who are whistleblowing getting more and more angry and hurt and tired. You know, if you look at some of the people talking about what they have found that is out of the mainstream kind of narrative, social sort of, I don't know, what's that called, that devastating thing that's screwing us all up, mainstream media.
Yes.
People are shouting louder in their own way. Speech is getting more pressure. People are talking faster, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And that seems to be, you know, what triggers the deepest wound for many of us at the moment is I don't feel heard. I don't feel understood. I don't feel valued. I don't feel seen. And I'm going to shout louder and be more. And then, of course, it's what my mum says. I think it was my grandma Yeda, her mum, that said this, is keep the anger, lose the scream. So oftentimes when we're screaming at each other, we can't hear that bit. We're, you know, sort of being histrionic. We can hear it when I say, you know, something that is still passionate and still driven by pain, which is usually what anger's about often.
Yeah.
Then we can hear each other more. It's less, what's that word? Scary. It's less insecure making. So I was thinking that probably is partly what's happening.
Yes. Yeah, you know, I mean, I think of the line, that's good. I've shared it to your business page, by the way, so that's done. A lot of the, you know, Shakespeare says a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. And, you know, the quote when George Floyd's murder happened about 10 days ago, and it set off a firestorm of protests around the country in the US and around the world now. You know, there were a lot of people were putting up the quote from Martin Luther King about protest is the shout of the voiceless, basically. Protest is what people do when they have no other way to communicate or to be heard. You know, so, but I do feel like, for me, honestly, I'm a bit hopeful today, quite honestly, because I do see people really beginning to open up to each other. And I do see the police and the protesters, the whites and the blacks in America, you know, having deeper, much more honest and urgent conversations about the state of the world right now. And I do see a lot beginning to move through people's consciousness, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, very much. Me too. It's shifted. But by the way, if you see me writing, looking down, I'm taking notes.
Great.
Yeah, I was feeling that today. I was thinking what's missing for me, because I took a leave of absence from my mega bitch for 48 hours, because that's nobody's friend right now. And I was thinking what's missing, and I thought fun, because you know, we all have this fun side that often is sort of relegated out of conscious awareness because we want to be serious about, not necessarily consciously either, we want to address the pain thing, and we want to hold on to what's important to us. So our kind of fun, playful side leaves the building. So I was thinking, you know, play and fun and compassion is kind of not as front line and center. And the thing is, we have mixed feelings everywhere. So like Sarah, I quickly withdraw from feelings. My God. I mean, please, people put in the chat if you identify, which of course they will, because when feelings that are passionate and loaded, often because it's driven by trigger, we withdraw in whatever way. Quite literally, we kind of go quiet and disappear, or, you know, we swap emotions out, or any of this stuff. And that's often the general, is we're scared of expressing ourselves because it's so loaded. One, because we know that boom, 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 it's going to come out, which of course then confirms that it happens wrong if it does. But most people, Sarah, I would say, are really scared of feelings. In fact, if I think about my life as a clinician, thousands of people I've worked with, that really is at the core of the issues, that we are not living in a way aligned with what we do feel, and of course then we end up not doing, saying, being what's true for us. And it stacks because none of us can maintain BS of presentation. You know, we call it persona in psychology, that we present this thing that we feel is acceptable, different ways of being a people pleaser, for example, and we can't keep it up, so we end up usually in a meltdown of some sort.
Right.
So Sarah, my God, I don't know if you have a question for us about it, but you're not alone, my love. That is a pandemic, that we suppress and judge away feelings, and we project that other people don't want to hear it, which sometimes they don't for lots of reasons, but usually it's our judgment getting projected out onto everybody else.
Sure. Well said. Very well said. My quote is, we hate what we fear and we fear what we don't understand. And, again, just looking at how, at first we had the virus, this epidemic, then we had the quarantine, then we had the economic uncertainty that followed that. And then we've had, this the murder of this man, on camera, that millions of people have seen, and all of that has created a perfect storm of people feeling, the world is not the world is not safe, or the world is not what I want it to be, or I don't know my place in the world right now, or I don't know where my life in this world is going, etc., etc. Pick your existential crisis. There's so many to choose from, and so I think it's getting us a lot more honest and a lot more open and a lot more vulnerable with ourselves and each other. And I think that's a great gift, even though it's coming at a high price so far.
Yeah. What I was talking about in my last two, I did pre-records where when it's a little bit bitchy and punchy, I put it on my friend page. And when it's a little bit more professional and considered, although I F-bomb frequently at the moment, that's on my other page. The other day, I put 2 lives, and my intention, which is kind of difficult, again, when you're screaming, to have land, was always my thesis about us. And same with you, and I don't mean written necessarily, but what I'm talking about is the grander picture. And it often gets people off guard and they don't really get it. What I mean by that is we have symptoms, in my mind, like riots, like the rage war and the race war and the gender war and everything. To me, they're pockets that are devastating symptoms of the devastation of the wider issue, which is we don't do the right thing. We're not educated to say, this isn't okay for me, or my mum is sick, or I love you, and it stacks. So that, for example, with race, we often don't have the clumsy, kind of naive, not racist, but ignorant conversations, so that things stack, so that then we, it's kind of like, what would that be? An argument between a couple where, he didn't do or she didn't do what we want, they're not happy, or this is what Tony Robbins says about couples, is generally women want men to be present and men want women to be happy, and if they're not, they take it seriously. So it's kind of like this mismatch of communication that builds and then it blows, and it can't not blow because it's the pressure cooker. So to me, it's the same just across issues, world issues, human issues, is because we're not talking to the issue, it then blows, and we scapegoat one thing because it's the man is alcoholic because he doesn't feel heard, or it's race, or it's gender, and to me, Me Too, for example,
right?
What, because my mind, because, and race and everything, because we don't talk about the truth of what's happening, because we fear so very much telling on people, telling what's happening, telling our experience, it builds and builds. So then we, as I was saying, conveniently make it about race, or we make it about women being abused, and we forget the men often, etc. And it seems to me it's so important what's going on to shine a big light, a great big torch on the devastation and the injustice. But equally, whilst we're doing that, in my mind, we exhaust ourselves talking about independent situations and forget the wider issue, which in my mind, I don't know, my fantasy is, unless you're in some kind of tribe in Africa or somewhere where people are raising together, we all do it, whether we're black, white, you know, gay, straight, we all are part of the cover up. So for me, when something blows, I'm like, what? Why is anybody surprised that the kid starts blowing up because they feel so insecure, or the couple is, you know, somebody's acted out, or race, or, you know, sexual orientation? It seems to me very naive and too centered on one issue and not looking at the bigger issue. It's kind of like if you have a lot of problems in an organization financially or with staff, you don't treat the staff. You go, what culturally is going on so that we've got symptoms down here? Because otherwise, the mental health, people in mental health, you know, get scapegoated, or race and so on. And it's like, we're not looking at the bigger picture here, folks. And we can't change this unless we have an umbrella approach, looking down, going, what is stacking people that we're having these bombs go off? And then we're exhausting ourselves, which is what I fear, is whilst we're fighting it out in our in and out groups, we're not looking at who's pulling the strings on our pain and getting together to go, okay, somebody said this earlier, and I'm really sorry, I can't reference them, is, you know, let's deal with all that, but let's deal with it once we've actually positioned governments and officials and so on to say, this is what's going on. Here's the emperor again that has no clothes, i.e. you at the helm. And then it will filter like a champagne, you know, thing at a wedding, which is now we can start to hear each other on, you know, the ground roots level. And to me, it's so dangerous to do it the arse about face, as my dad would say, looking at it from the bottom up, and it's we're not going to get up there quick enough in order to change it, in my mind.
Yeah. The quote that came through me, that was lovely. The quote that came through my guides was, when the people lead, the leaders must follow, and then harmony and balance will be restored. You know, and this is what I see is happening. You know, and I mean, I think that the world is growing up very quickly because we have to, you know, we've a prison I built out of lies is a quote from one of Sting's lyrics, you know, and we have kind of built this this prison society, you know, out of a lot of half truths and hidden agendas, and you know, just what I've learned personally since the virus started about vaccines and hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and how research is sold and manipulated, and how the pharmaceuticals, you know, are looking to make billions, if not trillions, from, you know, selling all this to everyone. And at the same time, in the economy crashing, all the money in the States, anyway, has gone straight into the stock market. So even in the greatest increase of unemployment since the Great Depression, stock market's doing great, because it keeps being inflated and supported by the Fed and the money from the U.S. government. So there's a lot of crazy shit going on, is the simple street level way to talk about it. And again, you know, then we throw gasoline on the fire by the murder of this man and many other injustices and insults to people's dignity and worth and all that. So there really is, to me, to my mind, there is a power struggle, you know, that we're all in the middle of right now, as you say, trying to speak truth to power. And you know, our power is that there are billions of us, and their power is that they control the agenda that most of us look at and think about and have to deal with every day. So I said before, and I'll say again, I think this summer is going to be pretty exciting, and not all of it necessarily easy. But again, like Poppy and I are saying here, everyone's just happy to listen. There's no comments here so far. There's 6 people on with us. You know, as we're saying, my friends, we just want to get on here and keep putting it out there with the resources that we have, and whatever, you know, tools and wisdom we possess to keep the conversation going, you know, to keep people thinking and asking and looking at what's happening and why it's happening and what we can do to respond to what's happening. Say again, you know, when I mean, I loved what you just shared. That was so vulnerable, and thank you, you know, that you were in, you know, megabitch frame of mind for a little while. You took a few days to step back. Me too. I had a power nap today because I had some disappointment come up. I didn't have the money I expected at the market, and I'm like returning groceries and like going, okay, that sucks. So we have these challenges as human beings on planet Earth. But again, we have great help and great hope, because we're none of us going through this alone. We're all going through this together if we'll allow ourselves to reach out to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Well, while I think of it, if you have a bit, you guys, perhaps donate a little bit to support us. I'm sure you've all been there when it's like, oh gosh, I don't have enough for what it is that I need. Basic human needs. This is what we need to attend to right now. And that's part of the anxiety and the fallout, is when we don't have our basic needs met, a roof over our head, or we know we can pay the rent or food or basic stuff. That's extraordinarily frightening. I mean, I don't know if you've been there, but I've been there many a time, and we can't be our best self. We can't be we can't be in the now when we're worrying and, angsting about the future, which, okay, that as a method doesn't generally work, but we're human after all. So donate if you can, if you've got a bit, or if not, think about us next time. That would be really lovely. Equally, one of the things I thought is, when you guys are on here, this is Lou and I talking about our experience and our thoughts and our politics, and doing our best to share our hearts with yours and invite you to do the same. Please know that we're both very challengeable with, if you have a different view or you have a question and you don't feel good about the answer or any of that, this is a collective. Pop in the chat what you are, what you feel. We need you to do that. In fact, you need you to do that, because people are wondering a lot of things and stuck with a lot of things. And whilst I think we're interesting, it doesn't necessarily support you enough if we're in a dialogue that, okay, you're not really identifying, or you don't like how we're being, or you think some feedback, then it's a collective, which I think is the point why we show up, is to bring us together in our difference, really, whatever that means, and love on each other and just have a discussion. I mean, Lou and I, we've talked quite a few times offline, and this is how we talk, isn't it, Lou?
Oh, completely. Yeah. You're saying such great wisdom as always. Can I share a paragraph or two from my little essay that I wrote this week about the wonderful, thank you, the wonderful mad world. So I just, in the essay here, which I counted it up, it's like 30 paragraphs long. I can't remember when I've written something that long for quite a while. It's been a while. The channeling that I do is usually what the writing I do these days. But this is what I kind of say here at the end of things. I say, I go through these 3 or 4 challenges that we're all confronting here, and I say, this is not the end of the story yet, my friends, but it is surely the 3rd act of this terrible play. Everything is at the breaking point. Everything has reached a feverish pitch. People are desperate, panicked, and hopeless. It's up to us to decide what this will be. A global tragedy that it seems destined to become, or the beginning of a new world. A world with a real, living, breathing sense of shared humanity, with respect for all life on planet Earth, one with real social justice and compassion for the weakest among us, and a new beginning for a better world. Will the world continue to rise up and find its voice, its courage, and its conscience, and say enough is enough? I, for one, do not consent to sit and watch this daily insult to our human history, our culture, to our heroes, to the Constitution and the principles and ideals that are still worth defending and fighting for. We are numb, mute, and traumatized by this hypocrisy, and need to be very clear right now, or we risk the further degradation of the human spirit in truly dramatic, tragic, and earth-shaking ways. I do believe and have great faith that humanity's future is nothing short of spectacular and breathtaking, a mind-blowing and brilliant shift in consciousness dimensions and priorities. This is all in our hands, and I fully and freely commit to do all I can to face the truth, to follow my heart, and to inspire others to care enough to save this beautiful world. So that's my screed.
When did you post that?
Tuesday originally, evidently.
I had two thoughts, which sort of integrates into what I was thinking earlier. Is, you know, part of how I've been recently is why isn't anybody doing enough thing?
Right.
And in my sort of leave of absence from my rage, I was thinking that this the only thing that we can do to affect change really is, one, keep the anger, lose the screen. Two, find some coping strategies, which is a lot of the time what people ask, which I wrote down. Perhaps we can do that, integrate those two things in our own wisdom, but equally focus on us. And I think that can be frustrating for so many reasons. One is it's pretty positioning to go, what are you doing?
Right.
But in terms of having, again, like with anything, if you and I have a row, I could sit around going, if Lou changed, I would be fine.
Right.
Or I could look at what's my bit and we could share if you're open to it, etc. And that's what we can do with this, you know, the ripple effect. I do this with people. If I see someone in the street in a mood, I make it my mission to the best of my ability to spread some kind of fun or love or whatever. And 99.9% of the time, there's a shift in the energy. And that, like anything, has a ripple effect. Same with negativity. So to me, I really had a word with myself in a very nice way, which is, you know, what is it that you can do a little bit more than get so heartbroken? I mean, I was watching about Candace Owens. I don't know if any of you know her, but she does her research on what's going on. You know, we have stirred up like nobody's business with the BS of the, you know, mainstream media, and she dives deep. 31-year-old bloody genius. She dives deep into the story behind the headlines, basically, and presents it to us. And I was watching some, and I'm always moved to tears and feel heartbroken. And you know, when your heart feels broke, literally, I can't really breathe through the pain when I see people in pain. That's the empathic way, right?
Yeah.
And again, I was just thinking, yes, we have mixed feelings. Yes, in my opinion, our rage and anger and reactiveness is justified. Having said that, it can be very convenient to rage about what other people are doing. And then this is what I was saying in my video the other day, the lies, the cover-ups, the places where we judge other people, the places where we don't say what's going on. We can shift all of that in so many ways with so many strategies. Gratitude, for example. Drinking half your body weight in ounces of water per day, for example. And they seem like irrelevant things at this time, but priming ourselves for being healthy energetically, because of course it's all linked to what we're putting in our bodies energetically and food wise.
Yeah.
And yet we resist that. And again, that's my umbrella kind of synopsis of the whole deal, you know, looking down, is what is it individually that we're doing? And I just thought, yeah, you could up your game, Poppy. So I'm trying to do that.
Sure.
Not trying, that's a swear word in my world.
I
am.
Yeah.
Once we get conscious of it, we can change it around.
Sure. Well, we got some great thank you
comments. Should we?
Yeah, brilliant. Just going to do that. So a minute ago, Karen said it's all part of a wonderful process. When we lack and we go to source in an authentic matter, that's where the brilliance is. Okay, or matter maybe. Yeah. Thanks, Karen. Linda says my emotions have gotten stacked as a single person, who I don't have an outlet to express my feelings with. I mean, when I get home from work, I have to watch what I say about things that happen at work due to HIPAA. I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, okay. So Karen's got a solution. Linda's describing the problem. Bless you. Sarah Parsons says, thank you. I'm feeling like I'm in the eye of the storm, inside that calm center, surrounded by chaos. I have no anger generally and can see that there is a much bigger shift towards a better way of life. Beautiful, Sarah. And Karen finally says here, one thing to remember, we're not victims. The power of the universe resides within us, through us, in us, resides with us, through us, and in us. Our goal is to bring people along, yes? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we're doing here. We're putting it out there.
If I talk to, could I, Linda's comment?
Yeah.
I think this is, well, I know this is, I appreciate it's different experiences, but I think you're talking to all of us really in terms of I need to choose my environments to speak about X, Y, and Z, or I can't speak about that. And oftentimes there's a middle ground with what total silence or blowing or being inappropriate or breaking some kind of whatever agreement. And conveniently, often we don't know and look for and get educated in the middle ground, which is where is the place where you can talk, not necessarily details, but what are you doing? Because this is the culture where we're silenced, and I keep saying it, we're goaded into silence, and then we wonder why we just can't handle it. So my question to all of us, but you too, Linda, is where are you going to just breathe and be you and get loved on and get guidance and coping strategies and look at your defensiveness and perhaps overgiving and exhaustion and burnout potentially, and you know, issues with overgiving probably, etc. There are many places to go. Groups. We have a free group. Luke has Luke. Who's Luke? Skywalker. Lou has channeling sessions all the time. So many times, yes, we have these experiences. We don't have to stay there. And I think when we're very practiced at staying there and dealing with things on our own, we kind of expect that we have to do that now, and we don't. There's plenty of opportunity, and this is where people resist, because it's kind of scary to go, well, finally I'm going to let people in, so we don't do it because it's unfamiliar. But equally with anything, whenever there's a problem with anything, we get to go, where two so important, the spiritual needs is growing. Where am I growing? And where am I contributing? And the contribution to people in my mind, well, I know this, is telling our truth, telling people where we're stuck, sharing what's working, sharing what's not, etc. So Linda, please, there's so many places, my love, and you're not on your own. Like 99+% of people will identify with this place where you feel in some way silenced, and we can make it excuse about HIPAA and find a middle ground.
What is HIPAA?
You know, blow up.
Yeah.
I don't actually know, but I think it's to do with the mental NHS guidelines, I think.
Yeah.
But it brings me on to Sarah and Karen, is you have a different kind of position that you're talking from right now. So I'm interested if you could please share with us your secrets or your methods about how you can be there. Because a lot of people were struggling to be in that kind of reflective, divine, healthy self. And that's nobody's fault. But can you tell us, please, what are you doing?
Yes, it's great.
I hope that's you, Linda.
Yeah, brilliant. Well said. Yes, I've connected with Karen and Sarah many times, and they're both well on their path. So it's great to hear people, you know, talking about a sense of peace and trusting life and connecting with Source, Spirit, God, Goddess, you know, and feeling supported. And you know, of course, I do that every day as well, to the best of my ability. And there are still, of course, ups and downs. That's you know, I get to dance with. But it's great because you know, no, I just want to say that you know, we really do have a virtual tribe. You and I and our groups and the people that find us and follow us on Facebook. You know, and I can't imagine what this time would be like of being quarantined during a pandemic if we didn't have the internet and Zoom and YouTube and every other thing that we do have. So it's you know, it's been challenging, but I think it's also, like you were saying about it, you know, we've become so fragmented in our world, and yet these common denominators are forcing us to see our common humanity and to be more connected and more available for each other, you know, and particularly healers and teachers and what have you, you know, who know that people are going through some very deeply challenging times, to keep wanting to, you know, put out whatever resources or ideas or groups, etc., that we can, so that people can find that that willingness to heal their stuff. You know, all of us have stuff that needs healing, and it doesn't get healed through denial. So I think we're doing really good work by just showing up and sharing ourselves and putting ourselves out there. And, you know, as you said, and being angry. I mean, I was really angry when I wrote this thing on Tuesday. It took me the afternoon and the evening right up until the moment I, you know, went to sleep. I was rewriting it, and you know, it was just a way to get a lot of stuff, a lot of things that I've been thinking and feeling, you know, very deeply off my chest. So
Yeah.
we have outlets, and we do have people, you know, that are there to help us. Like, you know, just getting feedback is such a great gift. But the thing is, like we're saying, you know, the world is so much has been conditioned for so long about denial and needing to always appear perfect, and needing to pretend that things are different than the way they actually are, etc. But this is really the time of getting very real with ourselves. And on the other side of that, I do believe that the veils, the illusions of separation are dissolving as we allow ourselves to open up to our own personal connection to truth, love, spirit, whatever name you like. And that's bringing great clarity and great gifts forward for all of us as well.
Yeah. And I think, well, you've named, I think a lot, and it's so powerful, the language we use, because it sort of pacifies our message in my mind. So I know that the example you're giving about raging really and vomiting, I suppose, onto the page, and like Carrie Fisher says, take your broken heart and turn it into art, that you're hearing you. And this is often what happens when we're hurt or anxious or whatever, judgmental or whatever, is we get to hear us. So where we complain that other people don't hear us, where we complain that's anything about somebody else, is we get to go, where am I not hearing myself, taking myself seriously, etc. Because people generally don't. You know, if I say to you, Lou, that's not cool for me, and then you see me doing the same thing to myself or with somebody else, the message I'm giving you is don't mean it, and so you're not going to respect it. So, and this happens again in all kinds of relationships where we say whatever, we violate our own values or whatever it is. So
Right.
attending to ourselves when we don't feel heard, in my mind, is the first place that we go. It works as a psychotherapy method. But just while I think about it, there's a potentiality, and I very much believe the universe will do what is meant to happen, but there's a possibility that we might get deplatformed because of certain things that we say or post or whatever. So I would highly recommend, just while I think of it, that if you like Lou and I, that you give us your email address, not here, but if you email us, there's lots of links, because that's happening to some people, and it could be the whole Facebook goes down, in which case, you know, let's keep in touch. And if you know anybody that you like, I'd say, you know, get up close and personal with them, in case we all, well, anybody that you like gets deplatformed. And I think that would be a real disconnect and an unnecessary one when we've got a warning, you know.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true enough. There's a friend of mine, another American, who's actually in England. His name is Isaac, and he's another truth teller and dot connector, and puts the puzzle pieces together. And and Jer Lyons actually is a very well-known healer here in Ireland who's done workshops around the world. And both of them have talked about We, which is another platform that is people are going to have an alternative from Facebook. So that's one to know about.
Look what Linda's saying about HIPAA.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Can we talk to that? Because that, in my
Sure.
mind, that's a no.
Sure.
What I've done, you know, as a clinician, and Linda, we have the pleasure of knowing each other quite well, is, you know, I've worked in psychiatric facilities and for other people and under contract, and, you know, yeah, anybody that's ever worked with me is under, you know, contract of confidentiality and so on. There's a massive weak spot in there, is that, as is my point, when we suppress somebody's truth, they go mad, period. period, in whatever way, financially mad, mentally mad. And I appreciate, and again, there's a middle ground here, because I've also debriefed staff, etc., and the military and police and so on. There's this suppression of information where we're sort of seduced out of an idea that we can think outside the box, which is, no, it's not silencing, period. There is a way that you can debrief and vomit on this stuff, where you're not naming names particularly, but also, and I would recommend it, and I'm not sorry for, whatever. This is one of the reasons I work on my own, is we can go to other people and say, this is my experience, without naming names, without saying the hospital or wherever we live with or whatever it is. Or we can take it as a sign which says, what's more important here? You're overwhelmed and you're, keeping stum on something because mummy and daddy don't want you to talk about the problems, being, whomever is your employer. Or do you choose you, which is, this is mad making? And it doesn't mean that you then don't serve the population that you want to serve. It doesn't mean you're in or you're out. Either I'm serving people or I'm selfish. It might mean you're an entrepreneur and you get to serve people in a different area. And this is the big push before you have a meltdown, before you have a heart attack, before you lose your mind, etc. So I appreciate it, what you're saying, but I equally know this is the stuff of sickness. So when we're around sickness, we get sick. And I know that twice I've gone totally mad because my whole environment and the people in it have been struggling so much that I ended up being them, lie down with dogs, get up with fleas or whatever they say.
Yeah.
So Linda, I'd look for the middle ground, my love. And the best way you can do that is take yourself very seriously and do some reflective writing and just purge, brain dump. What do I need here, or whatever it is, and just let your divinity come through, because there is always a middle ground, always. And we don't necessarily have a culture that says there is one, and there is. I promise you there is.
Yeah. Sarah's beautiful, honey. I couldn't have said it better myself. Sarah's saying the same thing. Thanks, Linda, for that very, very vulnerable share as well. Sarah says, I've worked 18 years with vulnerable disabilities, safeguarding needs people as ambassadors for truth. Yeah, I mean, that's what journaling, I think, is brilliant for, as Poppy's just said here, giving you a safe, private space to express everything, to get everything on the page. And then you decide what you want to do about that. But I was saying this the other day, I've been keeping a journal since high school. Writing is how I process things, and the teaching and studying with the Artist Way, which I've done off and on for years now. We're going to do that group again here in the next few weeks, start that up for the next 12 weeks. So you can come to my page and look about that if you want. But these are all great tools and techniques that get us more in touch with our inner guidance. It's the repression or the denial that creates the toxicity that feeds the neurosis or the psychosis or whatever it is, the acting out, the addiction, etc. So if we feel,
give an example?
Yes, go on. If we feel safe, loved, and supported, we come back to ourselves. Yeah.
I have many examples, but this one sticks out. Is I worked with a military guy. In fact, he was CIA. And we think often about CIA and FBI as this kind of James Bond thing. He was a computer analyst person. And those people they're not allowed to speak to independents, psychologists, generally speaking. The silences. And then you're a what? Flipping, you've broken your bond and whatever, and you're frowned upon or beaten or imprisoned.
Well, you're a whistleblower, as we say, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had this guy come to me, and he was very, there's confidentiality rules, obviously, in psychotherapy, Hippocratic Oath, and do no harm, and all of that.
Yeah.
And it went relational, which often happens with men, is this thing about women or whatever. It might be in gay relationships. We've got masculine and feminine within all of us.
Sure.
The relationship issues were playing out. So one, it goes into his body. So we somatize. If we don't speak about something, often it goes in the body and we have symptoms. So he was like, risk of all sorts, high blood pressure, pancreatic cancer, migraines, back problems and, you know, meltdowns and alcoholism and so on, that
A
generally how
mess.
men present with these issues.
A mess, as we
It
like
was
to call it.
playing, and usually about 42 years old is really where men have a meltdown. But it was playing out in the relationship where he couldn't be present to his wife because he was so present to having to suppress the truth. It was taking so much of his energy, which meant then he's not present to the children, which meant then, you know, they've lost their dad, which oftentimes is even more painful than somebody absenting quite literally from the family or dying. Is someone's present and you're still rejected, which is devastating. And he hadn't seen the effect he was having with his absence. And honestly, and screw it, I'm going to just say this. So I know about surveillance, and I was very confident none of that was going on. However, if it's CIA, you can do anything, obviously. He was pulled. The governing body, for not them, but over and above, which is really twisted criminal people that look into practice, threatened me, wrote to me. They wanted the notes on this guy. That's not happening. One of the reasons I work for myself, and all kinds of sort of what's the word, looking to discredit me because I wouldn't give the whatever. And that's happened twice actually. And
well,
no, because they were asking me to break confidence, and actually that's often the law. It is, you know, the law trumps this, you know, our own decision to offer information. You know, if we say in this instance, for example, confidentiality, the law is more, you know, powerful than which is why I work for myself and I'm a transformational coach, because nobody's doing nothing. My client is my client. And the reinforcing of that into this man, into, you know, his body, into his relationship, and the children and their coming lives and how they're going to interpret silence and speaking to your partner and looking at whatever, not to mention any of the people that have heard and seen and been part of suppressing me and suppressing him and so on, that then reinforces for us this catastrophic global issue of shutting up. And I was just mind blown. And equally, I've worked, you know, in places many of you know, with a lot of military, and you know, in my ear quietly in the street is, please keep doing what you're doing about bullying. We can never talk to you. Please don't use our names. It's just devastating, the different areas. So it happens in organizations, families, anywhere in the world that we look in our culture, there's silencing, and it really is dangerous. Like, that is conservatively speaking. So
yeah,
I feel for you, Linda, any of you, and just get in touch with Lou and I offline. We've got so much to offer you, and we keep strong. That's the oath that we've made spiritually. And for me, and you're very much it, the spiritual laws, the law of, you know, third law of physics, for example, essentially karma, trumps any law. And when we cut the cords on those, watch life go to shit for you. Truly. So I suggest that we come from that place. And I've lived long enough, and so's Lou, to know if we're breaking the bond with the truth of our soul that's dependent on the truth, this is not a happy life.
Well said. Very well said. Yeah, you're as sick as your secrets is what they say in 12 steps, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, wherever, you know, people will heal themselves generally if they have a sympathetic ear, you know, to bounce off of. If they have someone who's kind and compassionate and tolerant and supportive, and you know, I think the number one thing that humanity is struggling with, like you're talking about secrecy, is how we give our power away. You know, in my work with people, I see I can't really get between people and themselves. That's where, or let's put it this way, that's what I strive to do, is help people get some space between their public persona and their inner being. And if they can start to have compassion and kindness and mercy and acceptance and forgiveness for you know, their inner self, then their outer self starts to heal again. You know, then they start to come back into integrity.
That's such a powerful word, Luke. Mercy. Can you talk to that?
Mercy, sure. Well, it's that's great. Linda's just thanking you for your comments. She says you've totally nailed my father. He was in the military, was, as we call, a lifer. I mean, this is so mercy and kindness and compassion are when we're generous in our hearts. When we're not judging or withholding or fearing, but we're just present. And meditation, channeling, energetic healing, coaching, counseling, therapy, all these things that we do, are all the core of the structure is coming from a place of love, basically. Love invites kindness, love invites mercy, love invites compassion, love invites truth, love invites forgiveness, etc., etc. But when people don't feel that they deserve love, or they've done something that they're guilty or ashamed about, and they withhold love from themselves, then that's where we create these little nightmare realities for ourselves. And it's like with Poppy and myself, and with our own inner guidance and our own tools, we're always coming from the place of that's not who you really are. Your pain and your fear are quite real, but that's not who you really are. And if you can be kind and merciful to yourself about your pain and fear, then you can begin to come back to who you really are. That's the way I would describe it.
Yeah. And so many people aren't conscious of that stuff. And often I assume that they are. I forget that we get to have so much coaching because it's what is it called? Educating ourselves out. Is it Walt Whitman that talked a lot about this? Educating ourselves out of what we've been taught about whatever, and being able to talk to the need and be around people who talk to this stuff. I forgot my point, but anyway, there's so many simple things that we're not taught, which are disciplines for health and thriving, that we often only ever get taught this stuff and when we've like AA. One of the reasons I kept and keep going often, apart from it being a mastermind, anybody's looking to grow and contribute, I'm like, can I come in whatever way, whether or not I identify with the symptom or not? This was what I was going to say, is there are many symptoms of the issue, and we get to learn. It doesn't necessarily mean every week for 50 minutes you're in therapy for the rest of your life or whatever it is. It can mean learning the disciplines for thriving that you do in addiction groups. Is what are the disciplines that give us boundaries of health and thriving, and we're not taught them. And then again we wonder why there's racial war. We wonder why there's any kind of internal external war. We don't have the boundaries of how we coexist or exist, and then it's like a setup, and then we take it personally, which is what suicide is about, and depression, and Christ, I could go on. We are being set up.
Yes.
And the only thing that can happen is, in our own ways, we're standing on bridges, again, financially, relationally, whatever. It's not good enough. So look at what happens. Here's the beautiful, thank you for saying that, Linda. Look at what's happened to you in the way that you approach life and how you give and so on, receive, in part based on your father's loyalty to whatever, and now your loyalty to your father, and this whole making up of the way that we have to be in the world. Otherwise, we're disloyal to the person who we wanted to love us the most. And it's like our association with love and being respected and accepted is so warped that there's nothing about unconditional love in here. We're an extension of so much whatever, and that's not what we're about, which is why I'm sure Lou and I come from this spiritual place of we're not extensions of anything. We're here in our own right, and we get to come back to that. And until we do, we're fragmented in a way that says these parts of me that I don't judge as either me or I judge consciously, we're just so unintegrated. So we just can't be who we are. And it's just on every level, it's devastating.
Well, yes. And honestly, This is kind of, so two things occurred to me when you were sharing that, which is great. One is that Finland has stopped giving their kids curriculum requirements. Kids are just going to educate themselves whatever they're interested in. They're not going to be told what they have to study. Yes, I believe that's true. And they're already the most successful students, in the educational system, in the world. And most the Scandinavian countries are extremely open-ended and tolerant, and much more focused on what people want to learn rather than giving them an agenda. So there's that. And so the extreme side of all of this, like we're talking about secrecy and rigidity and rules and all that. I mean, the extreme version of that is trauma, what we call trauma-based mind control. And I've talked about this before, how so many of the educational systems that people go through to become doctors and lawyers and all sorts of things are just really intense and earth-shaking, and deeply people get deeply indebted in the whole process of this, and particularly in the States. And it just it takes away people's freedoms, and it takes away people's ability to make healthy decisions, and it takes away people's the luxury of people trusting themselves. So as life has become more and more pressured for more and more people, people have been working harder at things they don't like, and working longer in order to provide for themselves and their families and all that. And it really has reached the tipping point. I mean, I think that's absolutely what we're at right now socially. That this really is the beginning of, if not a revolution of consciousness, certainly a rebellion of consciousness. And I was mentioning Cornel West to you, I think yesterday, who's one of my heroes, who's expressing it very well, that as you said earlier about there needs to be a tribal culture for humanity in order to be able to be human and come together and support each other and help each other to meet our needs and to recognize what our needs are. The quotes also coming up from the indigenous cultures. There was one recently that said, when the white race is on its knees, the indigenous cultures are going to be able to step up and help people learn how to live on the earth again. And all of this is clearly, clearly on the horizon.
Yeah.
So.
And that, I suppose, the whatever you would call it, within this, all of this is the lights that do shine on some things that do give us an education about whatever that we wouldn't have got without it, in whatever way, our conscious unhappiness of the life that we have and the need for change, etc. And particularly, well, not particularly, things as well, like how extreme the suppression of the truth is, whistleblowing, abuse in relationships, whatever it is. And vaccine information and whatever legal information, what are our rights, the fact that most of us didn't know or don't know still what they are, and so on. One of the things that sticks in my mind, there's so many things, but for whatever reason, this is one of them, is with the vaccine regime or agenda or whatever we want to call it. I didn't know this. I did know that they're not tested and never have been, because then you have to research them for 2 to 5 years. So I didn't know this. I had a fantasy of it, that vaccines cannot be called medicine.
That's
because
right.
They're not researched. If they were researched, then obviously, I mean, why wouldn't you research something so you can call it medicine, which then gives a rationale for why you're sticking it in people, basically. And now with and just to say it, because it's so important for us, with the trials that are really damaging people, by the way, if you look into the research of what's happening to the effing monkeys and the people, I mean, literal monkeys, and then the people, it's extraordinary. But they're doing, when they're looking at placebo, i.e. looking at studies together and what they give people which aren't the vaccine.
Double-blind studies.
Now, exactly. They're now comparing vaccine against vaccine. So they're looking, and this is across the board. So they're not giving sugar pills anymore for the very reason that they're saying, well, if we give a placebo that you have, you know, it has an effect based on our mindset. If we give a placebo, people are going to know they haven't had the vaccine because they're not sick.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And still people are considering, yes, I'd have the vaccine. And what I often think is, but based on what? You know, what we're going on often is because vaccines are good and people are good and whatever. And clearly what's been shone the light is, well, one, people aren't all good. Two, there's an agenda with a lot of stuff, but equally, you don't know what's in it, what the ratio of people, whatever is. So a lot of people are getting more certainty again, getting more, definitely I'm having the vaccine, even though we don't know what that is yet, or how many people die, or how many people, whatever. And we're still wanting to take it. Or some people who are on the fence saying, actually, no, I don't want to take it. And equally, the ratios of what's going on, that just blew my mind. And it's in my video, for the latest one, it's a pre-record on my friend page, is the stats on actually the damage that's happening, the number of fatalities of people diagnosed with this hoax. You know, I'm just going to call a spade, global hoax that we are now inside because of. And that's not to take away from the devastation of people who've been sick, because again, they can't even touch each other to mourn, which is devastating. But when I looked actually at the stats and I compared 3 studies, because the last thing I want to do is, you know, take one person's view and then spout about it, and particularly if it's wrong. And I thought, oh gosh, it's just, I mean, the lack of education around this is so dangerous.
Sure.
Perfect example, I was in the shop just now and the lady went, and I thought, I remember I posted this meme a couple of weeks ago that says basically, wearing any kind of whatever, apart from the fact that we know that masks aren't effective, you know, doing this, so our noses over there, is like wearing underwear as a man with your dick out, basically. That this is not helpful because of here. Right. So, you know, the amount of us that are just feared and we're trusting one source, or we're trusting, you know, whatever. People who have an investment, follow the money, basically. And actually as well, keep an eye on, for any of us, social proof, because we follow the masses rather than go, where's Lou getting this information from? Before, just because I like him, let me just check that, because he may have been misinformed, or somebody, whatever, may have paid him off. Or and to me, it's again devastating that the truth doesn't come out. And those, it's always you that says this, those that do speak often the truth, or they have a different perspective, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. And that's what's happening with so many. We don't want to hear it. That's the point. That's what keeps us silent, is the idea that somebody might shut us up because we're saying something they don't want to hear. Sure.
Yeah, that's well said, hon. I agree with everything.
What's that emoji?
Sorry, what was the last thing?
That emoji, like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, yes, I've had a quick education in all of that as well, and it's shocking. Just to speak for a moment about the virus itself, you know, here we are. This started really in December, you know, maybe in October in China. So here we are, 8 or 9 months down the road, with the world in lockdown still, and the economy in lockdown as well in many countries, and we still don't know where it came from, what it was created out of, or how it was created, how to cure it. You know, the guy I listened to, this pathologist, he says, you know, hydroxychloroquine with zinc has been used for decades to treat malaria as a preventative. It's safe, it's cheap. Remdesivir, which is what they were talking about recommending, is expensive. It's you know, the research is not clear about how effective it is, etc. you know, and all of this is, like we're saying, there are hidden agendas that usually have to do with making millions, billions, or trillions of dollars off of people's pain and suffering. And here we are as a whole world culture facing the realization that is slowly dawning on more and more of us that we're being exploited, we're being lied to, you know, and it's more and more we're giving our power away in order to be safe, and it's just gotten extremely severe. So yes, as Poppy's saying, don't take our word for it, educate yourself, but for goodness sake, do educate yourself, because you know, you're being asked to learn how to consciously create your reality, because the consensus that we're all a part of is based on a lot of fictions and a lot of hidden agendas.
Yeah. Well, it's like Lou saying, you know, I don't know, we didn't know this, but Poppy's got an issue with, I don't know, something. And you all assume that that's right. And it may well be, but it may have context or whatever. And then we repeat it. And it's so dangerous, you know, with gossip. We repeat things. And another example, I was walking down the street and some people said, some ladies, oh, you're Poppy, the one with the coronavirus. And I'm like, well, that's news to me. You know, that's how things happen when we're being whatever. There's an independent guy who's done some research, and it was, again, I looked into it, who found a quote from Fauci, this all-knowing demigod who's instructing us about everything.
Well, he's very controversial, as we know from Judy Mikovits.
Yeah. A quote was found from 2005 that Fauci himself, it's a direct quote, long, and it says, so as the kind of synopsis of the whole thing, what is it called? Quetiapine? That.
Hydroxychloroquine.
I don't know where I got the other from. Yeah.
All right.
Is effective as a preventative and a cure. And he said this in 2005.
Yeah,
and I posted about it, and somebody quite rightly challenged it to say, hang on, that was in 2005. A lot has changed. It's a different kind of virus, etc. And I said, absolutely. However, if you dig into this guy's life, he's a compulsive liar, it's very clear. If you look into how he is as a person, obviously there's some sort of colorful traits that he's got, but equally, so many thousands and thousands of patients have been treated with this, or at least it's been confirmed by hundreds of doctors that this, combined with zinc and so on, obviously I'm not a medical doctor, is effective, and they've seen extraordinary change. So you put a lot of this together and go, why would you suppress something that's so useful? Oh yeah, because there's so much that can come with the virus, trillions, apart from all kinds of other things, whatever. I mean, we could just go on forever, but it's very convenient, again, that we're kept quiet and we listen to gossip and we suppress what we know and we feel positioned and that we'll be bad, like this, you know, client of mine, and we're picked off, and then it's proven that we're not supposed to do what we're supposed to do. And honestly, I promise you, as 20 plus years as a clinician, at the root of every symptom and every challenge is a culture that says you weren't allowed to talk about the thing, and it's stacked, and then you become symptomatic. And this is my point about the umbrella, is it's not about race, in my opinion. And for anybody that says Poppy is white and doesn't have a right to speak, you know nothing about my race unless you know my stories, apart, and even if we're different colors and whatever, your assumption is correct. My overarching argument that you and I talk to, I think, every single day, is this: our way of being, our way of suppressing, bleeds into every single human there is, and it's utterly a setup for pain and all kinds of issues. And that, to me, we don't address that. We're not conscious of it, so we can't do anything about it, like with anything else.
Well, that's right. I mean, I love what you've just said there, my friend. In order to heal, we have to face our denial and become conscious of it. And we are seduced, manipulated, and brainwashed, by experts in the culture who pretend to have our best interest at heart, and come to find, no, they actually don't. We're trusting people with our future and our lives and our health and our finances, and realize that they're taking everything that isn't nailed to the floor in everyone's life. Excuse me. The thing about the virus, this is part of what my essay was about, was Trump had not less than 70 days to do something about preparing US for the virus. I don't know what the schedule was in the UK, but it's very similar. And, absolutely. Yeah. But you see, then what that caused then is the economic collapse. And then what that so this is what you do in mind control, is you traumatize people, you threaten them with their safety and their security and their sense of themselves, and then they're quite malleable and able to be manipulated, for your agenda. This is, of course, David Icke's, stock and trade problem, reaction, solution. So anyway, the only thing I want to add to what you've just said there is, when you do know, like I love what Sarah's saying here, if we look back at many of the last years online, spirit channeling, it was to raise our hearts in preparation for this year. And I agree with that 100%, Sarah. So whatever resources we have in ourselves and in our lives right now, those are the resources that we're drawing on and building on, to have the ability to be able to perceive the truth and, be discerning and be discriminating and decide who is trustworthy and what is trustworthy and not. And, there's a lot of people that are, of course, terrified to think for themselves, especially when things are so intense and so there's so much risk. But there is no substitute, I think, for the future of this planet for not being able to think for ourselves and not learn how to trust ourselves.
Yeah. I heard, I can't write fast enough. Quick, what am I writing? I heard Dr. Buttar say the definition of brainwashing, which is extraordinary, because I thought, whoa, I'm brainwashed a lot. The definition of being brainwashed is what we've been talking about, which is you hear something and you do not check the facts and do the research because we're lazy or we don't know to do that.
We make assumptions.
It's just mind-blowing. Yeah. And equally in there, which I heard Dr. Shiva say, which I've said quite a few times since I heard it, is that the agenda here, and it fits for me, is take out the revolutionaries, take out the small businesses, take out the entrepreneurs, which you and I are, for example, take out the risk takers, cut their food supply off, wreck their business, whatever, in whatever kind of way, exhaust them, arrest them, kill them, whatever, because we're the people who are going to speak out, which a lot of people are afraid to do. We're following the masses, we're uninformed, we're sticking to our story about something else because certainty again is a survival need, etc. And I thought, oh yeah, what a brilliant plan, is take out the people who are prepared to say no and talk truth to BS and follow and do their soul's vision, mission and passion, to go absolutely no on integrity. A lot of the cops doing this, I took an oath, etc.
Yes, and soul truth.
Out. Yeah, and then you can suppress the message. And so often this is why people lose their jobs and come to me, I've lost my job because they didn't fit in, because they're not Daleks. And,
right.
Sorry, not sorry. As I was saying the other day, I'm losing compassion for people who are playing the victim here, or not helping themselves and getting amongst tribe and getting educated and being angry or being in pain. Because, and again, if an empath loses compassion, there's kind of some mess in there. Why would that happen when we're so patient? So I won't talk for others, but that's how I was feeling, was can understand it. And equally, sometimes I'm getting angry about it. And sometimes I'm, not. Mixed feelings, all of us have. But it's, wow. You get it.
Yeah, I get it. I hear you. Yeah, no, as we've said, honey, for me, this is the season of the heart. And like we've talked about, grief is a part of the heart opening up. And it really was quite emotional, this whole essay that I wrote, and I had 30 people share it, which was lovely, because as I said, I wrote a letter to my group yesterday, and I said I haven't had 30 people share anything that I'm aware of ever before. So that was a turning point. And people were telling me I don't know anything, and people were telling me I should go to Jesus, and people were telling me that we have to forgive each other, all of that. And it's like, you should read it. It really beat the hornet's nest, yeah.
Well, I apologize. You sent it to me. I'll share it too.
Sure,
you wrote it to me.
Sure. But just the last point I want to make here, and we're coming kind of down to the end of our time together, it's been brilliant, is that the truth is not something that is one thing today and something else tomorrow. Our ability to be able to perceive the truth and trust the truth is right there next to love and mercy and kindness and healing and wisdom inside of each one of us. And like what I loved sharing about the people from Finland giving their children permission to study anything they want, and the teachers being the resources for the kids to learn how to do that, is that people following their own inner guidance. And those are, as we know, you and I, this has been our whole challenge in this shifting of the paradigms that we're really in the middle of right now, as Sarah points out. I say the same thing. So the heart will guide us, and the mind needs to learn how to follow the heart. When we keep using the mind to tell the heart not to feel things, or not to think things, or not to say things, that's where all the pain and struggle comes from.
Yeah, and my question to us always is, what are the costs and consequences of us doing that? The heart was developed before the brain, and there's a reason for that. And it's taken me 30 years until I started to go, why don't you put your BS aside and look at your own responsibility and your own happiness, and there's something needs rewiring here. It's not working for us to come from a place of ego and cognition and intellect at all, obviously, and we know that. The question really is, and the only way we change, as Tony Robbins says, my love, it has to get really bad, and just almost to the brink of nothingness bad before we change. And that's what happens. But the big question, and we can always do reflective writing again on this, what are the costs to me of doing X, Y, and Z this way?
Sure. Well, as you're saying, ask your guides, ask your inner self, ask source, and then be willing to listen to the answer, be willing to be that receptive, humble, teller of truth to yourself first, and then to the people in your life second. And just to hopefully tie it up here, if the whole world's being lied to, and the whole world's being manipulated, and the whole world's being told something that isn't true, and all of us are living and breathing by this, there is a tsunami of healing and awakening on the other side of all of this. And that truly is my belief.
Yeah. And two things that I'll talk to in that as well is that's not new. And we know that, which is the whole world's being lied to. That's my greater point.
Sure.
The cultural shut up has been here for, I don't know how many years. I mean, again, ask and look at any writing from the dawn of time. Shakespeare talks about it, Plato, whatever, everybody this is the issue, is we're suppressed. And so that's been going on for a long time. So again, for me, the virus is just a symptom of that. Again, we don't talk truth, and we don't question and so on, because we're groomed. And, we're groomed. We're good students, as I say. And the other point with, for us to listen to within and listen to our guides and so on, that's all of us. That's the, big beefcake guy, or the, gym going mega masculine men, and the people who read the Financial Times, and all of us, just in different ways. There's always a voice that goes, nah, not a good idea, and in some kind of a way, or I really want to say that. The ego, like we're saying, the head is the thing that drives out that whatever you want to call it, divine message. Like each of us, 100,000,000%, we're potentially kneeling at the feet of an oracle when we do reflective writing, when we listen, when we take a bit of time, when we stand on grass, when we put our feet in the soil, in the sand, in the water, etc., when we just breathe. Every single one of us, demonstrated by the fact here you are as a guy, a man, with a history that's colorful and not connected necessarily. It's in each and every one of us. So oftentimes people are like, woo, or woo-woo, I don't believe in God, or, you know, I don't meditate. It's not about that. It's about doing whatever we can do in our own way.
Sure, that's right. It's peace of mind is the pearl of great price. And you have that when your conscience is clear and when you are trusting the truth. And if those two things are not happening, you don't have peace of mind, you know, and that's where we try to distract ourselves. Yeah. Well, sweetie, we leave it there for the moment for today. That was a brilliant session as always. Is that all right? Thank you.
Loved it. Yeah.
Thank you. Me too.
Can I just want to, sorry?
Yeah.
Let's just say a couple stuff, which is, you know, honestly, send us your emails, email us and just, you know, in the subject area, let's just stay in touch. In the event, you know, we were, or something happened, we're deplatformed or any of that happening. It is happening to quite a few people. And donate in whatever way you can. Share the video, give us reviews on our pages, this page and my professional page. If you like someone, say something. It's good for our heart and it's our way of contributing to this. So if you don't feel comfortable sharing the video, or share it on IM, or contribute, donate financially. If you got a couple of pounds or euros, or you're like, I'm minted and this did my heart good and better than any therapy session I've ever done, which is quite probable. Give us loads of money. That would help us, you know, be the best versions of us so that we can be us, but equally sign up. Lou does some wonderful things. We're not always for everybody, obviously. Me too, online programs you can do from anywhere. We equally know people, don't we? I don't know about you, but I refer quite frequently to really good people that I've met across the years. So get in touch, stay in touch, use us. This is why we come here, is to be used.
Yeah, well said. Brilliant, Hunt. Yes, people can find me at Awakened Spirits Network on YouTube or Facebook, or at Lightheart 2012. And I do morning prayers Monday through Thursday at 9 a.m. UK time. And there's always a link there from PayPal if you want to do a donation. And I'm happy to send you an ebook as a thank you. And Poppy and I both do great sessions. And we've got groups. And I'll have a Q&A group on a channeling group on tomorrow night at 9 o'clock as well. So,
if I send you on your IM things like my fatal mistakes, i.e., things to look out for when you're consulting with anybody like us, ebook, and could you put donate button and all of that in the main feed so people can just press a link to your email, press a link to mine, etc.
Sure, I'll take a look at it and see what I can do for that. Sure.
Then people can just ping. It's if it's done when I see that, I'm like, okay, I'll do it. If I have to go on, you know, the internet to the .com, I'll
sure. Yeah, no, that's no problem. You're happy to do it. Yeah. So thanks everyone. We leave it there for the moment. Well done.
Nice to be with you guys. Thank you.
A pleasure, sweetheart. For me too. Thanks everyone. Great session. Peace and blessings. Over and out. See you soon.